So today I wanted to share some practical tips for working with the California Department of Finance, DOF or finance for short, regarding legislation. I've been talking with former staff from the Department of Finance the past few weeks, and they've given me some key practical tips for working with the staff members of the Governor's Department of Finance. Now, while some of these recommendations or suggestions may seem obvious, many of them still bear repeating. So, the following are some of the suggestions that have been shared with me these past few weeks from former DOF staff. Always identify the client you're engaging on behalf of and state the position of that client on the legislation. You should approach the relevant department and agency before the Department of Finance because if it involves an implementation issue, then DOF is going to ask for their perspective. If it involves a fiscal analysis or fiscal risk, then it's fine to go directly to DOF. Next, be clear about what problem your bill is trying to solve, as the Department of Finance or a department may not agree that there's a problem, or it may be that the problem identified can benefit from a different solution that's being proposed by you. Don't tell committee consultants that the Department of Finance or administration supports your bill language unless their analysis has already been made public. Department of Finance and Fiscal Committee staff talk to each other regularly, particularly around suspense time. They have close working relationships and are likely to be more candid with each other than with you about bills. You should return phone calls and emails from DOF staff promptly. Unfortunately, there are some lobbyists who have a bad habit of either not responding or responding, frankly, after it's too late to be helpful. So when DOF or finance staff reach out to you on a bill, they're doing so for a particular reason, and they're usually under some significant time constraints. Now, if DOF is suggesting amendments, they are likely to reduce costs or reduce the risk of a mandate, and so your bill is more likely to get signed. They're not likely suggestions. Be straightforward about your bill strength and weaknesses. Look, no bill is perfect, and staff understand that any bill comes with some trade offs in the language. So avoid puffery or excessive doom and gloom statements to DOF staff. And don't try to hide any backstory on your bill. If a legislative proposal came from the executive branch and a regulatory action, or perhaps the filing of a lawsuit, disclose those facts. They always come out in the end, and if they don't come directly from you, you're going to lose credibility with DOF staff. In order to ensure that your meeting is as productive as possible, be transparent about the purpose of your meeting and be clear what type of information you're hoping to get from the particular meeting. For example, it's often helpful that an agenda or a bullet list of questions be provided to the DOF staff in advance. And this way, even if a meeting is not possible, then DOF can work to provide you written responses. You'll also benefit by giving finance staff as much lead time as possible prior to a meeting or a request to get back to you. So understand that despite the staff's best efforts, you may not always receive a response along your timeline. And keep in mind the state budget and what is happening there. For example, when formulating or advancing a request, such as to meet, you really need to understand how your issue may have been addressed in the final budget act or if it's pending during the budget negotiations. If you're advocating for a proposal with a large fiscal impact, you should definitely meet with the Department of Finance. Open up communication regarding what you're trying to achieve and why it was not achieved in the final budget act. And that can only help to get your bill signed. And determining a funding source and mechanism can also be quite helpful. Remember that the DOF must review nearly every bill, usually on the heels of an intense budget season. Therefore, be succinct and clear about what your bill does and how it fits into the current government operations and the current budget constrictions. DOF opposes a lot of bills because they result in costs that are not included in the current budget. Each opposition is not weighed equally on its merits. So if you think you have a good case that your bill actually saves money over the long term or that your bill results in avoided costs, you should contact DOF and make your best pitch. Be sure to also review approved bill positions from the DOF. They're posted on their website. So even though finance does an analysis on fiscal bills at some point during the legislative process, those analyses are only posted on their website once the position has actually been approved. Be sure not to pressure any staff to give you an opinion or a best guess. And you should definitely keep the communication going with DOF as your legislation moves through the process. And finally, always remember to treat all persons in the legislative process with respect. And above all else, be sure to always be honest, particularly with the Department of Finance staff.